Hi everybody, welcome to the Tribune Tower. I am here today with the cast of the Broadway-bound production of This Is Our Youth, trying out, starting here at the Steppenwolf Theatre in Chicago. This is will become the first Broadway production for Kenneth Lonergan's play. A very intriguing cast, let me say. Joining me today, Kieran Culkin, Tavi Gevinson, and Michael Cera. All right, so how did this happen? How did the three somewhat disparate folks that you are, how did you end up in this project? How did you start?
I've been going after this for years.
Why?
I did a production of it about 11 or 12 years ago.
Where was that?
In London,
Okay.
actually. Playing a different part, playing his part. Not well, I might add. But then after that, when that production was over, I just thought, when can I do this again? And I've been actively trying for about 7 or 8 years.
What about you, Michael?
Well, I did a production of this play 2 years ago with Kieran, and that was my first.
This was in Australia?
in Australia, yeah.
How did you end up in Australia with this?
Well, that was
Good
where
question, yeah. I don't know.
where there was space for us, I guess.
In Australia?
Yeah, in
You
the
had to
tiny
go all
theater
the
in
way to
Australia. They were like, "We've got some room for
An
you."
actor
over
of
here.
your repute? You couldn't get a gig on the Northern Hemisphere?
I didn't realize it was so shameful until after the fact.
And we were squeezed in between productions. That's why we only had 2 weeks. They had 2 weeks open
right.
between shows. So they
Yeah,
thought,
we were
let's
the
just-
shoehorn production.
Yeah.
But it was great. It was, but we just barely kind of got our hands into it. So it's nice to be able to do it now and for such a stretch.
And you did not have the fabulous Tavi in that production?
No,
No, we did not.
We didn't.
You're welcome.
We were short of Tavi.
And so, what is this like for you, this production? Have you read this play before, or is this a new...
I read it for the audition.
Yeah?
I hadn't read it before. And I really, really liked it, and it was very unlike other things I had been like putting myself on tape for, and I felt very strongly about pursuing it. And I made a couple tapes, had a call back in New York where I read with Michael, and then met Anna, the director here.
Yeah,
'cause she
Anna
lives
Shapiro,
here.
yeah.
Yeah. So, and then after all of that, yes, it all worked
And
out.
now here we are.
Yeah.
I mean, are these your backgrounds, or do these characters feel very removed from what you grew up with?
I would say very removed from what I grew up with, but it has just sort of a, universal truth to it that I think a lot of people from any era could
Like
pick up
what?
on.
Like just
What it essentially is about is that place in that time in your life right after your childhood, but right before actual adulthood.
which is like when you're 30 or what?
Depends, man. It depends. I know people much older than that are
Right.
still in that in-between phase.
Right.
But and some people, I mean, what happens sort of in this show, whether I don't know people pick up on it or not, is that sometimes people do grow when they're supposed to, and sometimes people just don't.
And you can argue that perhaps the more affluent your upbringing, the more privileged you are, the later you're able to push back that adulthood, right?
That's possible, but it's the choices that people make. I mean, especially with our characters, it sort of seems like we have similar upbringings, but where that takes us are to two very different places.
Well, so Michael, you had a sort of bit of a taste of, what do we call it, young Hollywood, shall we say, right? I mean, do you see resonances of that world in this play?
No, I think it's a kind of a different world from that world.
How?
Well, I don't know quite what you're describing with Hollywood. but-
Being young people, a lot of money, and
Yeah.
ability, quite
Yeah.
famous, gets glamorous life, that sort of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah, although I think there's a difference because I think if you're like a young Hollywood person, you have a kind of like drive or something or an ambition.
Drive, yeah.
You're kind of like looking for work as a young
Right.
person. Whereas these people are just privileged sort of kids who are like into their world and they really have their feet firmly planted in their world that they know, and they're into their drugs and like and their roles that they're comfortable with. But other than that, they kind of don't have any clue how to make sense of what's going on around them.
It's like their parents' money. And
Yeah.
like my character is the only one who's in college and does seem to be on some kind of trajectory.
Right.
But then in other respects, she's like socially somewhat stunted and can't really keep up with these guys. And I feel like I first came to it analyzing like, well, why is it in 82 and Reagan and like all these references and the music and what does it all? But I feel like all of that sets it up to maybe just capture something that is just like very universal and timeless and could take place in any era that's just, and that I don't relate to like growing up in Manhattan and coming from like wealthy parents or whatever, but I relate to that feeling of just like, oh, life is a long time to live with
Yeah.
yourself, and it's all ahead of me right now.
And you've got this fabulous fashion side, and you're well known for that, and a fabulous sort of following and that. And this character is a sort of fashion. She's kind of a cool. I mean, do you see elements of yourself in this character?
I feel like
You got a lot.
I don't know. The thing I relate to the most is just that, like, I just graduated high school. I'm 18 and she's 19, and there's so for me, it's not the same experience that these guys have of, like, you're maybe looking back more or something.
Because these guys are old, in other words. So they're
Because
looking
they're-
back. You're really living it. In other
Because
words.
they are hags. That was the subtext of that. No, I just mean for me, it's like it is real. I mean, God, I don't feel like in my body or I feel the driftiness of it. Very like, it's very amplified at the moment. So it is.
You feel the driftiness of having just graduated, and what do I do
Yeah.
next, and where do I go? and
Even
that
though
sort
I'm clearly like doing this and it'll
Right.
all be fine, there's still just like you become you have to learn how to talk to people differently when you're no longer like an eloquent kid, you know?
Are you no longer an eloquent queen?
No, it's not. Now you just have to know how to be a person.
Yeah.
You can't
Eloquent
just
quid?
be.
Eloquent quid. No, I understand that. I mean, you might fear with this play for one so young as yourself. I mean, normally we think of your people at your point in life as sort of optimistic, and
Yeah.
these guys are kind of all trapped in this self. What do you think about that, Michael?
I don't think it's cynical, really. I think it's kind of like reality. You know, it's like a cold splash of water.
Not a very pleasant reality.
No, well, I mean, it's unpleasant because you have to let go of a lot of things you've been believing in, but not because of what it is. You know, it's just the huge adjustment that you have to make and the major reorientation that you face when, you know, things that you've really believed in you're kind of seeing them for what they are and they don't look the same anymore.
And I think it's maybe like a lot of my favorite movies or comedy or whatever can maybe be seen as cynical, but
They
that's
can?
actually.
Like what? What do you like that's cynical?
Oh, I mean, like any we just saw Patton Oswalt do stand-up at the Chicago Theater, and it's, I mean,
Depressing.
yeah, it can be, but it's also, like, beautiful that you relate to it and that this feeling is captured in something, and that is uplifting, so. for me-
So you're doing the show at Steppenwolf in the round, and then you're going to redo it for Broadway in a proscenium theater. So are you excited? That's weird. I mean, I'm not actually sure that I've ever seen that happen before, ever.
No.
Trailblazers, we are.
I've never done anything in the round, so I'm kind of
Yeah.
just, looking
In
forward to that
a
experience.
weird way, it's easier because you just accept that everyone on all sides will get their different, like, you're
Yeah.
not playing to one side,
Yeah,
and you're kind of more natural. But
there's nowhere to hide.
Yeah, but there's no way to hide, exactly.
That nowhere to hide thing is going to come because there's always something where I'm never going to be comfortable with this section, so I usually just turn up and now I'm not going to be able to do that.
Yeah.
So the production in Australia was a proscenium production, right? So
Yes.
you have
Right.
this is a new way of doing this play.
Yeah, absolutely. Very new.
That would be very cool.
Everything about it has been new. I feel like there's things we didn't even come close to
No.
shedding any light on last time.
You represent a sort of a new audience for this play. I mean, this play, is typically played, people close to my age would have enjoyed this play. Right now, you've got a new, and it's interesting how the world has changed because those characters are sort of dealing with a sort of Reagan era reality at that point, and now not so much.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely kind of a different political moment, For
Right.
But I mean, I think the truths in it are much deeper than that even, It's more of a human thing than a kind of a cultural, societal moment. It's really like just a feeling of maturing and the growing pain of that, the real discomfort of that.
Have you had discomfort with that yourself? I mean,
yeah.
you seem so together.
Well, I mean, I freak out privately. I wouldn't do it here now. It's those late hours.
yeah.
No, I mean, but I think everyone goes through, around this age, around 19 and 20, when you're just really like, throwing yourself at the walls, but you're not quite sure why. You're not quite sure what you're fighting against, but you're trying to make sense of everything,
Well, the idea of, like, good and bad is so, it's like, I don't know, like, our characters are just like, ugh, Reagan. And their idea of bad things are just like, Reagan, adults. Like, I feel like that's just I feel like people my age today still feel that kind of like, when you're just forming beliefs, you do kind of simplify things in that way. So even if I mean, Kenny, the playwright, did say that there was something about coming up in this time where, like, you had this romanticized ideal of the 60s and all the social change and all the young people, and then they came into their youth and it's like the 80s and Reagan is president and all of that was gone.
Yeah.
And I think that that's, I mean, even like people my age now, I think you have this idea, because so many things about being this age do like celebrate it and glamorize it. This is like one thing that doesn't, that's like
And
not cynical.
You're
but,
enjoying,
yeah.
I mean, you're navigating a pretty big career like seconds after you graduate from high school. I mean, is this, are you enjoying that life? You're enjoying this?
Yeah, I mean, I get to do a bunch of stuff that I love, so it's obviously, you know, something to navigate, but the other thing would be too, you know.
Yeah. And then you're off to New York with this play, and are you then staying in New York? You're gone sort of leaving Oak Park and going to New York and all the rest of it?
I don't know yet.
Oh. All right, Michael, Tavi, Kieran, thank you so much. Thanks for
Thank you.
joining us.
Thank you.
See you, everybody.